What is up? My name is Michael Detoli. I am with Recall Massachusetts, Massachusetts Recall. We are putting forth an initiative petition with the Attorney General's office to get a constitutional amendment to allow for recall elections in Massachusetts. This is kind of in response to the fact that there isn't one, and we wanted to look at recalling the Norfolk County District Attorney, and it actually wasn't possible in 2023 to do so. So that is why a group of citizens have gotten together and are looking at adding this provision to the Massachusetts Constitution. And I do have some good news in terms of press. We did get a story by Christian Wade, who I think he had called me a couple weeks ago, and I'd forgotten about it, with the Eagle Tribune. So a pretty good publication. And the headline, look at this. Proposal would allow recall of governor, other elected officials. So he does a great rundown of the amendment, but also what I love about it is that he included information that I had mentioned to him about why. So state and county elected officials could be recalled by voters under proposed constitutional amendment being considered for the 24 ballot. That's actually a mistake. It's the 26 ballot. The proposal, which is being reviewed by the Attorney General's office, would authorize voters to initiate petitions to recall state, county, or district level elected officials across the state 6 months after taking office or 6 months prior to the expiration of the terms. That would include the governor, lieutenant governor, AG, district attorneys. We talked about this the other day, state lawmakers, blah, blah, blah. Proposed amendment would allow for recall elected officials on grounds of malfeasance, misfeasance, and nonfeasance in office. If you don't know what those are, look at episode 1. We talked about it. We even looked at some examples in the Karen Reed case where Adam Lally and other members of the Commonwealth is, committing those legal, what's the word I'm looking for, I guess? They're ethical and legal crimes. I don't know if I want to say crimes, but they're definitely questionable. As well as a conviction of a felony or serious crime involving moral turpitude. Under the proposal, voters would need to gather signatures amount to at least 25% of the number of votes cast in the most recent election to put the recall of an elected official on the ballot. If the ballot vote is successful, a special election would be held with the next 60 days to fill the vacancy. An interim replacement could be named by the governor. The governor would be replaced by the lieutenant governor if ousted in a recall effort under the proposal. So this is all stuff kind of right out of the amendment that we wrote. This is what I like that he did include. The proposal's chief sponsor is Michael Detoli of Winchester, former Watertown councilman. He said the initiative petition stems from a citizen-led effort to recall Norfolk County District Attorney Michael Morrissey over concerns about his handling of court cases. Thank you, Christian Wade, for including that. Because when we spoke on the phone, I did mention that, and I thought there's no way he's gonna put that in the article. And not only that, he goes on to quote me. It was really surprising to find that that Massachusetts doesn't have a statewide recall law because it's allowed at the local law level. If we had a tool like this in place, there would be a mechanism for voters if they believed there is corruption by elected officials to at least begin the recall process. And I did want to talk about corruption today because I think that is the theme of the week, particularly if you watched the Norfolk County District Attorney's press release on Friday. So I want to talk a little bit about that. But thank you again to Christian Wade for putting that in the article. The ballot question is one of more than 40 referendums being considered by the AG. She's got to review the proposals and certify them before supporters begin gathering signatures to make the ballot. In a memo to the AG's office, Detoli said the proposal is consistent with Article 8 of the state constitution to empower the citizens of Massachusetts with the means to safeguard their democratic system by ensuring that those in positions of authority remain responsive to the needs and desires of the public. That is why we want recall. It is not because we just want to say, oh, I don't like that person. I didn't vote for them and they don't deserve to be in office. That's not the case. But you need to have this as a mechanism in case. It's like an insurance policy. In case you have corruption at the highest levels of government, you have to have this. 19 other states have this, by the way. They said Detoli, who described himself as a liberal Democrat, said the ballot initiative is bipartisan and draws support from a broad spectrum of political views. I do believe that. I am a registered Democrat. I don't think that this is necessarily a Republican or a Democrat issue. I actually think this is very nonpartisan. I think this is just for people who want good government. He said many of the proposal's backers are concerned about corruption in government and the inability of voters to recall most elected officials. And then it just goes on to say, about getting signatures. Let's see. I don't know. He actually did a really nice article on this. He includes everything. I didn't even get a chance to read the whole thing. So I just saw it today, but I guess it was out there yesterday. So I did want to do this because I reckon there's probably going to be a lot of discussion about district attorneys in the next few weeks at least, as people are kind of focusing their attention on Michael Morrissey. If you didn't watch the press release, you should watch it. It's 5 minutes long. It's related to the Karen Read case. We have a video up where we kind of remixed it. If you want to watch that, you can look for it. But all kidding aside, and it actually mentions in the article, and I didn't mention to him that I was elected. I didn't mention to you that I was elected, but I did 4 or 5 years ago. I ran for office. I was elected, and I served. And during my re-election, I was offered a bribe, and I thought, wow, this is actually happening at this level of government. So that was when I quickly realized that corruption is all around us, and I became a little bit obsessed with it. And that's why I'm focused on this in particular, this angle of it, because I do think Massachusetts, how many times have you heard people say Massachusetts is such a corrupt state? People say that all the time, but yet we don't have any real mechanisms in place. At the local level, you can do a recall. You can recall your selectman or your school committee member, but you can't recall your district attorney. You can't recall your governor. And that's just something that a lot of states now have. So that is why we went forward with this. But so I was, in a room where I was offered a bribe and I didn't accept it. And I realized, wow, political corruption is, not only is it everywhere, it's a problem. But specifically, if you look at corruption between police departments and district attorneys. So I wanted to dive into that for a little bit, because I think the reality of corruption within these pillars of our society is very real. Not always. It's not always prevalent. It's not always a problem, but it can be a problem. And I think people need to be aware of what to look for. And a lot of people are seeing it right now in Norfolk County. So I'm going to shed a little bit of light on the issues. I don't think everybody understands what a district attorney is. I see a lot of people getting confused about what a district attorney even is. So, there is a MGL, Mass General Law, Section 12, Chapter 12, Section 12. It's very, very basic. We have district attorneys. What are they? I think there's 11 of them in Massachusetts. There's like 11 counties. So there's 11 district attorneys who they're elected. They serve for 4 years, and they are basically in charge of that district and all legal proceedings. They have a lot of ADAs, assistant district attorneys, under them doing a lot of the work. I know a lot of ADAs in different counties. They're good people. They're not necessarily hired based on who the district attorney is. They work for the district attorney, but it's not like, a new district attorney comes in and gets rid of all the ADAs and brings in new ones. They're kind of, just they're in it. And they may want to move on to do something else eventually, but it's a job. So the district attorney, they're elected. They don't really have a lot of oversight. We'll talk a little bit about that. We talked about it last time as well, but essentially there's not a whole lot of oversight, which is another reason why you would want to have recall. So everyone knows what police departments do, right? They're essential. They maintain law and order, investigate crimes. They pursue justice. They're important. But how they interact with district attorneys, I think that's sometimes misunderstood, or maybe just, people aren't educated on what that's all about. So I just wanted to take a little bit of time to talk about the district attorney's office and sort of the role of that collaboration with police departments. So police departments, they're gathering evidence at crime scenes. They're interviewing witnesses. They're building cases. Now, the district attorney is probably the second most important role in the criminal justice process, besides police, I would say. DAs are responsible for representing the state or the government. in prosecuting criminal cases. So, how do they uphold justice? How do they do that? They have to evaluate evidence that's presented to them by law enforcement. They have to decide if they're going to bring charges. They have to figure out if they're going to pursue legal action against these individuals that are accused, usually of the police, by committing crimes, right? So they're obligated to uphold the law. That's first and foremost, right? You expect fair treatment of all individuals. You expect them to have a good background, right? That's why they're elected. Let me see here. I don't want to jump around too much, but essentially what happens is in the process, police investigate, right? So a crime's committed, police department investigate the crime, they collect evidence, they interview witnesses, they build a case, physical evidence, witness statements, surveillance footage, forensic analysis, all that relevant information to a crime. Then that gets submitted to the district attorney. So the police department believes they have enough evidence to proceed. They present their findings to the district attorney's office. That's important to know. All right? It's the police giving the district attorney basically the information, the case, right? So now the district attorney has it, and they have to decide, is there enough evidence to proceed? Then they'll present their findings to a grand jury. We'll talk about that in a minute. So district attorney reviews the evidence provided by the police department. They assess, how strong is this case? Are there any legal considerations? Can we secure a conviction in court? They decide to pursue charges, right? They've now reviewed it. They decide if they're going to pursue criminal charges against the suspect. If they believe there is sufficient evidence to support a case, they'll move forward with an indictment. So, grand juries in Massachusetts, we have grand jurors, citizens that convene. The DA presents the case to the grand jury. All right? They review the evidence and they determine whether there's enough probable cause to issue an indictment. This is all happening in closed doors. Grand jurors, all right, again, they're just like you and me. Evidence is presented by the district attorney. They get the witness statements, the testimony, the documents. Right? All of this happens kind of in secret, right? It's in closed doors. Witnesses are questioned. Helps the grand jury make an informed decision. But there's no one other than the jurors acting on behalf of the defense. And that's not even their job, really. But, you know, they're making decisions. They're reviewing evidence presented by the prosecution. And they're determining if there's enough probable cause to issue an indictment. These are just everyday people. These are just regular people who are trying to assess all this. So they're evaluating the strengths of the case before allowing the charges to proceed. Then they might ask questions. They might seek clarification. They might request additional evidence during the presentation by the prosecution. It's only the prosecution showing them the case. There's no one there on behalf of the accused. Again, it's just the grand juror's job to kind of filter this all. And if you're a district attorney and you know the process, you know how to go through this, you're going to be able to get a grand jury to indict. It's going to be very easy to do that, especially when we're looking at corruption. We'll talk about. So, do grand jurors know if the evidence presented is obtained legally? Do they know if the rights of the accused are being upheld? Can they themselves avoid personal biases? Do they challenge a DA to make more sufficient evidence, to make sure sufficient evidence was presented before they proceed to trial? So these are all just, things that you're hoping for, but you don't know if you're going to get those. All right, it's important to note that um, their primary role is assessing the prosecution's evidence, determining whether indictment is warranted. They don't, they're not defense attorneys. They're not trained legal professionals. There's no one there who's providing assistance and advocacy for the people who are facing the criminal charges. Very, very, very important to just drill that home. There's an article from Cornell. Let's see here. I think it was Cornell, yeah. The only issue jurors are asked to decide is whether the prosecutor's evidence is legally sufficient to justify an indictment. But as discussed below, jurors are not qualified to answer this question. So this is kind of the biggest problem with the process. Is again, they're not professional jurors. They're not legal people. But it's the way it's always worked. But it also is very vulnerable, especially when you're talking about somebody who's corrupt. So if the grand jury believes there is sufficient evidence to support a charge, they're going to issue an indictment. And that is a formal charging document that outlines the specific charges against the accused. So in the Karen Reed case, for example, I think there were like 3 or 4 charges that she was indicted with. So it's usually multiple, right? Then you're arrested. Once the indictment is issued, the police are going to arrest you, and it's going to move forward to court. And that's where, the arraignment, the trial, and all that takes place. So, talked a little bit about the role of the district attorney. Now, I want to talk a little bit about kind of the partnership between police departments and district attorneys, because it's meant to be a collaboration. It's meant to be aimed at upholding justice and ensuring public safety. And, in a perfect world, here's a picture of a district attorney and a police chief right here. I mean, this is the collaboration that you sometimes see, right? So district attorneys have very good relationships with the police departments in their county, right? I mean, that's to be expected. You hope that's happening, right? Here it is again, a little bit more of that collaboration. So we have, the district attorney with law enforcement, because this is what, in an ideal situation, you're going to have this kind of partnership. All right, you're going to have police officers, detectives. They're working, with the DA. They're gathering evidence, conducting their investigation, and presenting those findings to the DA, who's going to evaluate this case objectively. The district attorney's office, they're going to seek justice. They're going to act as, a check on the evidence's credibility, the legality before proceeding with criminal charges, right? What is expected? Seamless coordination between these institutions, maintaining the integrity of the criminal justice process, protecting the rights of the victims and the accused. What's the reality? It's very complex, right? We have corruption, abuse of power, biased decision-making. All of that's going to seep into the process. All of that's going to erode the foundation of justice. Police misconduct, manipulation of evidence, undue influence on investigations can undermine the impartiality of the evidence presented to district attorneys, right? So these are all just kind of known. This isn't unique to Norfolk County, by the way. District attorneys can sometimes face pressures to prioritize conviction rates over fairness. So sometimes there's rushed investigations, right? Lack of transparency, wrongful convictions. These are all challenges, not uniform across all police department and district attorney's offices, by the way, right? There's plenty of officers and plenty of prosecutors who are upholding the ethical responsibilities of their office. Loads of them, all right? The reality is there are issues. And that's why you need to have mechanisms in place, right? Like recall. So how do you know if there's been corruption in a criminal process, right? So, common signs of corruption. See if maybe there's a case that you're following now. See if you've seen any of these major red flags, right? Lack of transparency, right? Authorities are secretive about their processes, secretive about their investigations. that's going to raise suspicions. People are going to be wondering about hidden agendas, potential for unethical behavior, right? Another concerning indicator is evidence tampering, manipulation, alteration of evidence, distorting the truth, undermining the credibility of investigations, right? That is an issue that can happen. If you see, or you get the sense that there's evidence tampering taking place, that's probably a red flag that there's corruption involved. Are there any instances of misconduct with that police department or with that district attorney's office? That's a sign of corruption, right? So was there ever any previous examples of abuse of power, unethical behavior, anything like that that eroded the public trust? Again, another red flag that there might be some corruption in that institution. It doesn't mean that it's always the case, right? It's just a warning signal, just to know it's there, right? You also need to realize that we need to support efforts to strengthen accountability and reform. So pushing for changes on policies, procedures, and transparency, like a recall amendment, can create a system that's more resistant to corruption. So that is why we are doing what we're doing. All right. I don't want to get too further into like specific cases, but I just wanted to give kind of a general overview of, again, this is like what a district attorney does. This is kind of their relationship with police, and this is how you can kind of see where things go wrong. So I don't want to take too much time, but if you have not joined the Facebook page, it is Recall Massachusetts, or Massachusetts Recall, formerly Norfolk County DA. And also, we are looking for volunteers. So on September 6th, we're hoping to get certified by the, let me see if I can take a look here, by the Attorney General's office. And if we are certified, we have 2 months, 60 days to collect 75,000 plus signatures across Massachusetts. So we're going to need volunteers to do that. If you could, I will put a link in the description. Click on the volunteer link, give us your information so we can work with you on helping us collect signatures over the next 2 months if we are certified. So we'll find that out, I think, in about a week and a day, and I'll mention that in the next stream. So thank you very much and enjoy your evening.